Imagine two people. They're both smart, both well-meaning, and they both care deeply about making the world a better place.
Right.
So why is it that when they start talking about politics or religion, it's like a switch flips? Suddenly they're locked in this fierce battle, talking completely past each other.
As if they're living in two different moral realities. It's not just that they disagree on policy. It feels like the other person is fundamentally, morally wrong.
Exactly. And that feeling, that intense friction, is the puzzle we're diving into today.
It's the core question Jonathan Haidt tackles in his book. He suggests that these people we disagree with, they aren't evil or stupid, they're just running on a different psychological operating system.
And that's the insight we're here to unpack.
Yeah.
We're actually trying something new here, a more in-depth approach to book coverage with this extended summary.
Oh, that's right.
Unlike our usual focused analysis, this is meant to be a comprehensive overview. We'll trace the intellectual roots, the key arguments, and the real-world impact of the book. If you find this expanded format helpful, please let us know. Your feedback really does shape what we do next.
And just so you know, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's Notebook LM, which lets us have these deeper, more dynamic conversations.
The book, of course, is The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion, published back in 2012.
And it really sits at this fascinating intersection of moral psychology, politics, and religion studies.
It came out at the perfect time, too.
Yeah.
Right? As political polarization was really starting to accelerate, turning these so-called culture wars into genuine public crises.
Haidt's goal was to give us a framework to actually understand these conflicts, not just to judge them. And he breaks his whole argument down into three big claims.
Okay, what are they?
First, that our intuition comes first and our reasoning comes second. Second, that there isn't just one principle of morality, but several different foundations.
And the third?
And third, that human beings are, by their very nature, deeply groupish.
All right, let's tackle that first one, because I think it's the most counterintuitive. We all like to think of ourselves as rational beings.
Of course. We think we see an issue, we weigh the facts, and then we decide what's right.
But Haidt says that's basically a fantasy.
He argues it's almost completely backward. We have a fast, automatic, intuitive gut reaction first, an instant feeling. And only after that does our conscious reasoning kick in.
And its job isn't to find the truth.
No, its job is to justify the feeling we already have. This is his famous metaphor of the elephant and the rider.
The rider is our conscious reasoning, right?
Exactly. The rider is small, and it thinks it's in control, but it's sitting on this huge, powerful elephant. That's our intuition, our emotions, our gut. And at the end of the day, the elephant is going to go wherever it wants to go.
And the rider just comes up with a good story for why they're going that way.
Precisely. Haidt says our reason doesn't act like a scientist seeking truth. It acts like a press secretary. Or maybe a better analogy is a lawyer.
The defense lawyer.
A defense lawyer for our gut feelings. It's not looking for the truth. It's looking for evidence to support the conclusion it's already been given.
He has some fascinating experiments to back this up, especially this idea of moral dumbfounding.
Oh, this is the best illustration of the concept.
Can you walk us through one of those scenarios?
Sure. Imagine a family's dog is killed by a car outside their house. They were planning on having steak for dinner, but the son suggests, hey, why don't we cook and eat the dog instead? No one is harmed, no laws are broken.
Okay, just hearing that, my immediate reaction is, yuck. That's just wrong.
And that's what most people say. It's viscerally wrong. But when the experimenter asks why it's wrong, people struggle.
They can't explain it.
They'll say, well, it's disrespectful to the dog, or it's just gross.
Yeah.
They can't find a rational harm-based reason, but they refuse to change their mind. They are, in a word, dumbfounded.
So that feeling, that conviction without a reason, that's the elephant. And the rider is just stammering, trying to come up with a defense.
That's it exactly. And when you apply this model to politics, you suddenly understand why our debates are so intractable.
Because we're not actually debating logic and evidence.
Not really. We're mostly just defending our team's gut feelings. My inner lawyer is working overtime to find flaws in your argument, not to genuinely consider if you might be right.
But wait, that sounds a bit bleak.
Mm.
I mean, if our reasoning is just a servant to our emotions, is there any hope for changing minds? Is truth just irrelevant?
It's a really important question. And Haidt offers a subtle way out. He says, yes, we are terrible at finding the flaws in our own thinking, but we are incredibly good at finding the flaws in other people's thinking. So reasoning isn't useless, but it works best as a social activity.
So I won't change my own mind just by thinking harder about it.
Probably not. But if I have to explain myself to you, and you push back and challenge my reasoning, then my inner lawyer might be forced to concede a few points. The social pressure can actually nudge the elephant.
Okay, so if our morality isn't just about rational calculation, what are those intuitions based on? This seems like a perfect bridge to his second big claim.
It is. This brings us to moral foundations theory. The core idea here is that morality isn't one single thing, like a light switch that's either on or off. It's more like a set of taste buds.
We have several different moral senses.
Exactly. Haidt argues we're born with these pre-wired psychological systems that evolved to help our ancestors solve recurring social problems. He identifies 6 of them.
Let's go through them. What's the first?
The first is care harm. This is the most obvious one. It evolved to help us protect our vulnerable children. It's what makes us feel compassion and cringe at cruelty.
Makes sense. The second.
Fairness cheating. This one is all about cooperation and reciprocity. It's that deep sense of justice, that feeling that people should get what they deserve and that cheaters should be punished.
Right. Karma, in a way.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Then we get to the foundations that are more about binding groups together. The third is loyalty betrayal. This is the foundation of tribalism, patriotism, and team spirit. The feeling that we need to stick together.
Okay, what's number 4?
Authority subversion. This evolved to help us navigate social hierarchies. It's about respecting legitimate traditions and authority figures, which helps maintain social order.
The 5th one is a bit less intuitive, I think. Sanctity degradation.
It is, but it's powerful. It grew out of the need to avoid contaminants like spoiled food or disease, but it expanded metaphorically to include a sense of spiritual purity, the idea that some things are sacred and shouldn't be touched or degraded.
And there's a 6th one that was added later, right? Liberty oppression.
That's right. It was added to explain that powerful, immediate reaction people have against bullies and tyrants. It's the feeling of wanting to be free from coercion and domination. It's distinct from fairness.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting because the theory isn't just about listing these foundations. It's about how different groups use them.
Yes. This is the key to understanding political division. Different political ideologies don't have totally different moralities. They just build their moral worlds, their matrices, using a different mix of these foundations.
Now, how does that map out? What about liberals?
Haidt's research found that people who identify as liberal tend to rely overwhelmingly on the first 2 foundations.
Care and fairness.
Care and fairness, yes. Especially fairness interpreted as equality. Their moral radar is exquisitely tuned to detect suffering, cruelty, and systemic inequality.
And conservatives.
Conservatives, he found, use a much broader range. They certainly value care and fairness, but they draw just as strongly on the other foundations: loyalty, authority, and sanctity.
Can you give us a concrete example of how that plays out?
Sure. Think about a debate over, say, a national flag burning protest. For someone relying on a care-fairness matrix, they might see it purely as an issue of free speech and liberty. No one gets hurt, so what's the problem?
But for a conservative,
might see the same act and have their sanctity foundation triggered. The flag is a sacred symbol of the nation. Burning it is a desecration. Their loyalty foundation also lights up. It feels like a betrayal of the group.
so both sides are feeling genuine moral outrage.
Absolutely. But they're speaking different moral languages. One side is talking about individual rights and avoiding harm, while the other is talking about sacredness and group cohesion. They literally cannot understand why the other side isn't horrified by what they see.
This seems like a good moment to pause. For those of you who find this kind of analysis useful, we want to mention our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments.
Yes, on the channel we offer AI-driven book analyses, summaries, critiques, all designed to inspire a bit of reflection and rational thought.
It's also a great resource for aspiring authors who want to deconstruct how successful narratives are built. You can check it out after this.
So we have these clashing moral matrices. What feels virtuous to a liberal, say, a policy aimed at universal care, might feel deeply immoral to a conservative because it subverts authority or undermines group loyalty.
And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the third major claim, the groupish mind. Why do we even care so much about these moral groups in the first place?
Haidt's answer is that humans are not just selfish individuals. We have a powerful dual nature, which he captures in a great metaphor. We are 90% chimp and 10% bee.
The chimp is our selfish competitive side.
Right. Always looking out for number one. But that 10%, That's the B. That's our remarkable ability to lose ourselves in a group, to work together for a common cause. He argues that this capacity for hive psychology is what makes human civilization possible.
And this isn't just a metaphor. It's grounded in evolutionary theory.
It is. It's based on the idea of multi-level selection. Natural selection doesn't just work on individuals competing with each other. It also works on groups competing with other groups.
So the most cooperative groups were the ones that survived and passed on their genes.
Exactly. This dynamic forged a psychology that is both profoundly selfish and, at times, profoundly altruistic and self-sacrificing for the good of the in-group. It's why soldiers will jump on a grenade for their comrades.
That's the hive switch he talks about.
Yes, that feeling you get at a concert or a political rally or a religious service where your sense of self just sort of dissolves and you feel part of something much larger than yourself. It's an ecstatic, unifying experience.
But like everything else we've talked about, this has a dark side.
A very dark side. The same switch that binds us together with our in-group also blinds us to the humanity of the out-group. You can't have that intense us without creating a them.
Which is where religion comes into the picture.
He argues that religion is perhaps the most powerful hive-making technology humanity has ever invented. It creates these vast moral communities bound together by shared rituals and, crucially, shared sacred values.
And when a value becomes sacred,
Becomes non-negotiable. You can't compromise on it. You can't trade it for something else. It has to be defended at all costs, which explains why religious and political conflicts can be so absolute and unforgiving.
so when you put it all together, our intuitive minds, our multiple moral foundations, and our deeply groupish nature, you get a powerful explanation for why our world is the way it is.
You really do. And the book's ultimate goal isn't to make you give up your own convictions. It's to make you less angry and a lot more curious about why other good people hold theirs. To see that they aren't crazy, they're just seeing a different part of the moral universe.
It's a fascinating paradox, really. The very same psychological systems that allowed us to build cities and nations are the exact same systems that now fuel our most bitter tribal conflicts.
It is the fundamental dilemma of our evolved nature. And that leaves you with a really big question to chew on. The book suggests our moral differences aren't just mistakes in thinking, they are deep, almost innate.
So the question is,
If that's true, how can we possibly design political or social systems that harness our amazing bee-like ability to cooperate without falling prey to the destructive tribalism that always seems to come with it?
that is something to think about long after this deep dive is over. If this discussion has piqued your interest, we really do encourage you to check out the book for yourself.
And you can click the link on screen for our in-depth book critique.
Please subscribe to the show, share this with someone who might find it useful, and purchase the book through the link if you're so inclined. And remember to think rationally about your own intuitive moral world.
See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.